What's good, everybody? It's your girl, Miss Giselle, and this is the Black Table Conversations with Miss Giselle. And today we have Mr. Kash Gaines in the building. Say what's good, everybody.
How you doing? Thanks for having me, Miss Giselle. Yeah, my name is Kash Gaines. It's spelled with a K, short for Kashif. I was born in Chicago, and my parents were part of the Nation of Islam when I was born, so they gave me a Arabic name to teach me that there are names that come before America. But Kash for short. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, I'm so excited that you're here. He left out the I'm a break dancer part, but we'll get to that. A break dancer, and first of all, the number one position is reparationist. So let's talk about your career and what you do in the breaking industry, breakdancing.
Yeah, essentially, I mean, it's a part of our culture, dance and expressing yourself, escapism, rhythm, dancing with ladies, and fashion. So I grew up kind of in that world, like always loving to dance. But it wasn't until, kind of when YouTube broke out that I started to see these viral videos of people sliding on their heads and stuff. And I'd already been practicing basic stuff like flips for a couple of years, but to see that anything you wanted could be a dance move was like kind of revolutionary to me at the time and still to this day because dance to me is a form of meditation that I use for releasing anger or when I want to imagine being someplace else, like I said, escapism. And it's also an athletic activity. It's good for the body, and so it's good for the mind, body, and soul. So as far as my career, um, I began filming YouTube videos of dance competitions as well as viral influencer dance clips on the side in places I would travel to. Indeed, places I was invited to because the YouTube channel that I started with a friend at the time was named Yak Films, right? Um, for me, I wanted to travel to places and meet dancers and have conversations with them about how they saw the world, but also how they viewed music and their own body. And it was interesting because as I began to travel filming these dance competitions, by the way, over 30 countries I got invited to over a 10-year period. I started to have a bit of a frustration, although people were uplifting the Black American identity and our music and our dance moves. I feel like there was a disconnect with our politics and our understanding of identity. So that's what kind of wrapped me around from my career into the reparations movement. But yeah, many people know me through the dance world, not just as a dancer, but also as a street dance show host, where I hosted this show for once a week, every Friday for 2 years, talking about other dope dance styles and dancers that we couldn't travel with to film with ourselves. Just to shout out the culture as a whole. And so yeah, that's kind of the origin of the last 10 years of my work and me as a film director, filming commercials for Jordan and Verizon and Adobe, um, so on and so forth. But I had to stop at some point and be like, I understand that all this is a means to an end and a way of expressing ourselves and feeding ourselves from it, but it didn't feel like true ownership, except for the YouTube channel that I still retain ownership to this day. But it didn't feel like I was giving the dancers something long term that they could survive off of. So I started stepping back and just questioning what is it I'm really presenting. So yeah, thank you again for the question. Yeah.
Yes. And honestly, I met you actually in the club, right? So, and the energy, like when I tell you you're a break dancer, but it's like you were built for this time, this moment in time. Because right now, this new focus solely on reparations is mobilizing people. And tell us what attracted you to that conversation or that movement, this movement.
Yeah. Again, as I was traveling, like I got to go to places like Holland and meet dancers there, and they were in love with American culture, American music, and dance. We could have conversations about the political figures, Malcolm X, so on and so forth. Even Farrakhan would come up in conversations with friends in France or people who I met in Sweden. Um, but there would be a disconnect when they would refer to themselves as Black, because to me it felt like two things were happening. Like they were kind of erasing their unique identity, because these were homies from Suriname, places I didn't really know about and hadn't heard that word before, and wouldn't hear that word if they would continue to refer to themselves as Black, right, as how white folks see them. So I started realizing, like, you know, different people see the word Black differently, and I thought we all kind of were on one accord about it. So I started to step back and be like, damn, well, what am I? I'm Black American, I guess, not just Black as a race or as a construct. And I started to question, what is the Black American identity? And to be even more transparent, I was a humanitarian for the longest time because I care about all human beings. Like, we all have a skeleton, we all need food, we all need sleep, shelter. But as I studied world geography, it was over and over again that there were specific peoples oppressed in their homelands by a specific people that had arrived there. And with my own Black American history, because I'm Black American on both sides, um, I don't really know where I'm from, and it was always kind of embarrassing to mention slavery. So I thought that Black was kind of like the new hot, but and we made the N word hot, a lot of things, but uh, um, again, it was that disconnect, and I got to the point where I was like, I don't know if I could be a humanitarian when everyone cares about their own unique experience and no one cares about the Black American experience, save us. So I started to step back from being a humanitarian, at least towards being Pan-African, right? Not necessarily trying to keep up with what's going on in India, China, the Philippines, Indonesia, and Australia. I stepped back from even being a Pan-Africanist to what I now consider myself a Black nationalist, because I feel like there are people who admire the continent to the detriment of the plight of people in the Americas, North and South America, to be frank, but specifically in North America, where it's the biggest microphone, the biggest access to media, the biggest influence as a quote unquote Black person. So, and I gotta be honest, I love Black American culture, period.
Black American culture is American culture. Let's keep
So,
it all a buck. I like to
so
make sure we have this Black American culture. If it wasn't for our culture, like, tell us what we didn't create for the culture of this country. Then we could talk in a different way,
uh,
not discounting anybody else, but just saying, you know. Now,
yeah.
when we go into reparations, though, I saw an article came out about you specifically back on October the 1st. It was in is that called the Epoch or Epoch?
I think it's the
The
epoch.
Epoch Times. Okay, so in the Epoch Times, they well, the title of the article is "Man as California Reparations Task Force for 40 Acres and a Tesla." And after you said that, like, it went crazy with the youth today. It's kind of mobilizing a new level to this movement. And you got a little kickback on Clubhouse in a lot of spaces, but I don't think that they were hearing you when
Pushback, yeah.
playing it. Yeah, you got a lot of pushback. So let's talk about that. Now, where did the 40 acres and a Tesla come from?
Right. So as I was becoming more frustrated with people calling themselves Black as far as like a worldwide identity, right? I started to bring up things that only really Black Americans knew about to see if our identity was indeed unique, right? Juneteenth, stuff like that, right? And breakdancing becoming a worldwide art form right now. It's b-boying or breaking is now about to be at the Olympics in 2024. And I was upset that there wasn't enough representation of Black Americans or even OGs who are going to be helping to select the next people of that process. So I started thinking about what are some unique reparations claims. Like, it ain't just a check, right? It's also our land that's owed. And the 40 acres and a mule was like such a popular phrasing for the longest time amongst us. And I don't know if other cultures have that specific phrasing. So I was already like, this is something just for us, and we already know about that unique history. It was a part of the Civil War and in America, right? So I was looking at that. I was thinking about Spike Lee and how he kept that phrasing alive with his 40 Acres and a Mule Filmworks production company, right? Everywhere he goes, every time he mentions his movies, he mentions that name and mentions that company, right? And I was like, I'm looking at it like, do we want a mule in modern day? Like, what is the equivalent of that? What's the representation? And I just had to like let it marinate for a while. At the same time, over and over again, I'm having conversations on Clubhouse with people who are criticizing reparations, and they keep landing on the same points of Black folks are going to spend the money that they receive overseas instead of investing in America. And I knew for a fact that there are studies to prove that Black Americans invest in American industry more than anyone. We're the consumers of America and consumer culture, and a whole culture of influence around what to consume. And we can make overseas brands hot as well. So I don't understand, first of all, why Versace doesn't support reparations then. If we're going to go out and buy hella Versace with the money, they should be the main ones supporting it.
But
But I don't think they think that.
it's
Hmm?
their history. You know their history, but we'll get to
Yeah,
that.
or Gucci or Mercedes Benz. So I looked at the Mercedes Benz argument. Are Black folks going to spend their reparations on a German company or on a company overseas? How can we tie it to an American industry and to someone who's of popular influence himself, right, or herself? And I thought about Elon Musk. I thought about Tesla Motors and how it's in California, and this was the California Reparations Task Force I called into, the task force created by AB 3121 in California, right? So I thought about Silicon Valley and if they might be listening in. And, I couldn't really see a way to tie our 40 acres to, Google or to Facebook at the time, but tying it to a Tesla, and again, a Tesla being a Tesla 18 wheeler or maybe a Tesla robot or Tesla Roadster. Like they have very many things within there. It's not just a single car, but again, it was a conversation starter to say like 40 acres in a Tesla. The pushback that I got was from some within the reparations movement who know that white folks after the Civil War were given 160 to 500 acres per family in something called the Homestead Act, right? So what they're arguing for, some of these other reparationists, is actually way more than 40 acres, but 160 acres, and way more than they would say a Tesla is worth in government loans that would be interest free, and uh, um, an audit of the USDA for the food that they distribute. I don't know. It was some very specific points. It wasn't something I felt that could fit within a hashtag though. And to me, it was about connecting to the youth as well, and not necessarily trying to sell to the next generation that we're going to go back to farming. I definitely think there's more things that you can do with 40 acres of land, with 160 acres of land, like to keep it, you know, fair with how much we're owed, because we got to add, interest for pain and suffering, and late fees as well. So it could be 160 acres per person per family, whatever that number is. I just definitely think to make it a conversation, that hashtag had to come up, and I just called into the public hearing and suggested it among other ideas in the 3 minutes I had to speak. I also suggested lifetime payments, as Oregon has already set that precedent with Senate Bill 619. I also suggested that they use some of the same wording from that Senate Bill 619 in Oregon, because it mentions tax exemption. And I think that our inheritance should be tax free. It shouldn't be subject to bankruptcy or alimony, insolvency laws or whatever. So all that's listed there. I also mentioned to them that reparations can include 800 credit score resets for all Black Americans, at least in California. I was very nuanced, but people, at least from that article, the part that they most stuck with was the 40 acres and a Tesla reframing in order to make it sexy to the next generation. And so I feel like it was mission accomplished because it got attention and brought a conversation back to our land as well as the money that's owed to us. So that's the long story short for that.
Right. So as you said, it's not an end all be all. It's to spark the conversation, and you did just that. Now, what you're doing in so many spaces and the movement that we're all like pushing right now. Um, how do you feel about what we're about to do on October the 16th? How do you feel about what we're about to do in DC? Because that's also been a conversation starter right now. it's some stuff that is about to we're about to set the record straight.
Yeah, this will be my fifth reparations march this year, I think. Or I mean, we did some counter protests as well, and we did a rally one time out front in Georgia anyway on Juneteenth. But to me, first of all, being a presence in person definitely was powerful in the last age. I think that Black Lives Matter and the Women's March, there were a lot of like people who were out and physically a presence. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if it's necessarily the 21st century way of affecting change, though. I think that the pen is mightier than the sword,
Right.
right? And so right now it's about policy and it's about what that could look like and about ideas being shared amongst people. So if a few people with really good ideas can get up on a pulpit or like I said, counter protest or have a microphone, I think it could be very, very valuable to us since this information can be disseminated so easily, right?
Right.
So one person can make a difference is what I meant to say by that whole long thing. With me, I always keep it on these three major points, and uh, um, I let it evolve from there. And I'm trying to create a speech that I might be able to present at this upcoming
We
march in Washington, D.C., right in front of the White House for reparations specifically, sponsored by the U.S. Freedmen on Code. Shout out to them. Um, for me, what I'm going to say is these three things: 2053, 16T, 151M for me, right? 2053 was the statistic that we've been taught, says that by 2053, African American wealth is set to be at zero, right? Not necessarily income, but wealth. And that's about passing down money to the next generation. That statistic was figured based on our housing market, based on our access to income, mass incarceration, many different points were featured. But 2053, that number, that year has actually been sped up though, right? It's been exacerbated by COVID. So now out of nowhere, our savings have been destroyed and the housing markets have been destroyed as well. So it could be 2030. So I just want to mention the urgency of this. Many people think that Black Americans are in a good situation because of the decadent veil, the fact that white media overrepresents those who are successful and shows low level criminality as though we're only criminals for being $130 million salaried LeBron Jameses, right? So
right.
2053 is sped up to 2030. 16T is about how $16 trillion has been lost from the American economy just in the last 10 years due to discrimination against Black people. So again, this is harming America, discriminating against us. So paying us as well as stopping the discrimination would help America, would help all of us. Lastly, I was going to say 151M for me, which is that Thomas Kramer, the German economist, German American, he's an American citizen, who studied implicit racial bias for the last 30 years. In his spare time, was able to calculate based on the minimum wage of the time from 1776 to 1860, around the time of the Civil War, for a 24-hour day's wage with a 6% interest rate, that Black Americans would be owed, as far as direct cash, at least an inheritance denied of $6.2 quadrillion, a word I had never heard of before, which is 15 zeros, to be clear, right? That is $151 million per Black American in modern day. That is what I see when I look in the mirror. That's what our ancestors wanted us to have. That was the work that they would have been paid. And again, the money that they would have passed down to us denied. So 2053, 16T, 151 million for me. That's what I'm hoping to bring to this upcoming march in DC.
Yes. And I love the fact that so many of us are not just being boots on the ground. We are getting into policy. We are getting into political positions like Tamir Shealy, or like a couple of other people that's running on the basis of, yes, on the basis of, I just got a mask for her. Yes, I love it. Bring some of those. Yes. So we have like Tamira Shealy that's doing her thing. We got to give big ups to the millennial group. It's like a millennial movement that started, and there's a lot of people in Clubhouse that's rocking it, and we are on the rise actually. And in addition to the millennial group, we have so many different, like, reparations over everything. That's a West Coast driven organization, and they're not playing, boots on the ground all the time. And that's Kevin Lane. He's the head of reparations over everything. So we got people mobilized, and U.S. Freedmen on Code. The next NAACP is what we're calling. So what we're doing right now, in addition to other groups who are doing the same, like, similar things. So what we're doing right now, we're mobilizing, and reparations over everything. I know I love the merch. I love the merch. Saying that, we we have a lot of work to do, and it's going to take all hands on deck. So even those of you who are listening into this conversation, you should be alarmed, because I'm not trying to leave my children zero wealth. What do you have if you can't protect your children? If you can't pass anything to your children, what is the purpose? So right now is the time. Everything that we do right now is intricate. Is the most important part of this movement, because this can make us or break us. And we're ready for the fight all the way. So with all of that said, Cash, do you have something that you want to leave with everyone? Or, because you'll be
Uh,
back, I'm sure, when you get more stuff.
I just hope that that hashtag began to crack open the imagination of not only elders, who are going to re-see how the 21st century is, because they got to understand we're going to be starting to get taxed for driving gasoline cars in some states. So we need to be on electric cars. We need to be the owners of it, maybe designing our own once we have our reparations as well. Uh, um, but I'm with the
To
whole
help,
40. Hmm?
like, getting in the marijuana industry.
Oh, as yeah, as well as hemp is, yeah, exactly. But to me, just with the 40 acres and a Tesla, on an ending thought, like if Elon Musk can imagine going to Mars, right, and Jeff Bezos going, to space himself, like we need to, as a people, uplift ourselves and really stand tall on the shoulders of our ancestors and see far into the future and understand what the next generation and their predecessors will be living like, and already try to plant ourselves in that. So keep in mind buying land in places like Greenland, as it's supposed to melt in the next 5 generations, or keep in mind things like excuse me, Elon Musk is trying to build robots to be a labor force for him on Mars. We as Black Americans were the labor force for the last 400 years. So I feel like it would be poetic justice for us to be the first ones to have access to these mechanized labors. So I'll take a fleet of 4 of them to grow my hemp on my farm, and then my 40 acres will be put to good work. But I just wanted to drop ideas like that in closing, so people can really open their imagination to more than just 160 acres and a tractor. We need to be in the 21st century and really thinking, 2030. We need to think owning asteroids instead of trying to mine resources from the planet, because that's what the generation is going to be living on. So propel yourselves into the future, Black man, Black woman. Peace and reparations.
I love you. Peace, love, and reparations. Saying that, it's been a pleasure, guys. And until next time, see you soon. Peace, love, reparations, and all of the other stuff. Anyway, have a good one. Thank you.